Joining us now is Reverend Nick Hood. Appreciate you joining us.
Chuck, thank you.
He is a former member of the Detroit City Council. He no longer has a dog in this fight, so to speak, on the council, but may have other dogs to fight. But thank you coming in and being able to look at it sort of from afar and what is going on with the city of Detroit.
And thoughts about primary
election night. Your church is in the city. You've got a long history here.
Well, this is a very historic election for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that this is our first council by district election in, 90 years?
Yeah.
And a lot of people may not realize this, but the reason why we had the city council at large, or we call it the committee of the whole, was a self-correction from the crime and graft of the 20s and early 30s. You had several members of the city council and a mayor who went to jail. And so the self-correction process, and we had council by districts at that point.
Right.
And so the self-correction for the city, the purging, if you will, was to have a quote-unquote committee of the whole where everything was done in the light of day. There were no committees, but everybody got to see everything that was going on. And so it's kind of funny that 90 years later, we're going back to a system that really was thought to be corrupt. But it's not the system, it's just the people, at that time. But the mood that I get out there, and I don't know if you guys see this, but I think the city is really primed for council by districts. I think there's a sense that we had gone as far as we could with the committee of the whole setting. And so people are really hopeful, they're excited, there's a lot of energy in the campaigns that are out there. You have new faces out of the 7 districts, the district elections, only 2 of them have incumbents running, which tells you that there are going to be, at least 5 new faces on the city council?
And I think there is excitement in the neighborhoods with the thought that there is going to be a representative who can be accountable for their particular community and communities that will make up those districts. There'll be kind of a go-to person and someone that they can hold accountable for things getting done.
Well,
and I hope that's the case.
The new charter allows for the districts, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't empower the council members in the same way, say, as a Chicago, where you have the aldermen and these ward bosses. And so the only concern I have with the council by district in Detroit is that it may be setting the new council up for failure, where you have these high expectations from the citizens in the neighborhoods who say, well, you're my councilman, how come my garbage isn't picked up? No. And my understanding of the new charter is they still don't have wide authority to direct services to their area. So that may be something that has to get tweaked out, but more importantly than that for me is the perception that the citizens have. I think the citizens really need a perception that, as you said, there's somebody accountable, somebody I can talk to. I may want to hang them, because they don't pick up my garbage doesn't get picked up or the lights aren't on. But at least I think the citizens are real hopeful.
Yeah. Let's go back to the mayor's race for a little bit, because 2 people will come out of this. Some way, shape, or form, even with all the write-in stuff. 2 people will emerge, and those 2 people will have to square off in November. We've already seen that voter turnout is low, not as high as what we would all like. Do you think that will carry on into the general, or do you think that, no, things are going to change once we get out of August and as we head towards November? That people will get galvanized by the fact that they can focus on not umpteen number of candidates, but 2 candidates?
I think it depends on who the 2 candidates are. If Duggan survives as, say, the number 2 candidate, maybe number 1, in the primary. But if he survives, I think that you'll have a different dynamic in the general. You'll have the racial dynamic will be much more predominant than in the primary. I think there may be some surprises. If Duggan doesn't survive and Lisa Howes, Crystal Crittenden, or Tom Barrow assuming that Benny Napoleon is one of the other survivors of the primary, I think Napoleon's going to be in for a fight that he'd never imagined because of the intelligence level of those three candidates. And it's not an impossibility. The few people I talked to today and asked who do they vote for,
Right.
two of them told me they voted for Lisa Howes, and the third one said, if I thought that either of the two women had a chance, I would have voted for them. This is a woman. And of the three people I talked to, two are women, one was a man. And I'm saying we may see some surprises tonight.
And there are more female voters in the city of Detroit, I think by a slight margin, and females historically get out and vote sometimes, and that could play a
they get
real
out and
different
vote,
dynamic here.
and I would say it another way, which is Detroit has a feminist undercurrent in its politics. I mean, I think back to Mary Beck, you know, the first female president of the city council was Mary Beck. You had, Irma Henderson, Mary Ann Mahaffey. We have a strong tradition of electing women, and women, have a very different way of looking at elections than men. So I will be that's what I'm looking at tonight. I'm curious to see just what happens. I know a lot of people are looking just to see, does Duggan survive this? But I'm interested to see how the women do.
Yeah, and what role do you see the business community playing in all of this, given the resurgence that we see going on in downtown, in midtown? They've got a stake in this to make sure that whoever the next mayor is, that they are in concert with many of the things the business community is trying to do. What role do you, and it's not to say that as though business hasn't been there in the past, they have through,
let me give you a perspective on
all
that.
the different administrations, but do you see any of their roles changing?
The same strong business support that Mike Duggan enjoys today, the same key leaders are the people that supported Kwame Kilpatrick and then supported Dave Bing. It's the same people. So don't be mistaken about it. It's not like this is something new. I think that the new thing in this election is that the financial support that Benny Napoleon has picked up tends to be the smaller, the ethnic, the minority business people who don't hobnob with the rich guys who are gobbling up all the buildings downtown. And so these small business people feel shut out. And I think that's part of the reason why I suspect that the UAW came out so strong and Teamsters for Napoleon. I think they're looking at this. This is not just a race issue between black candidate and white candidate. This is a class issue. You have some African Americans who are higher income, who I think may feel more predisposed to Duggan than Napoleon. You have these business people, small business people, the party store owners, the gas station owners, the grocery stores. These are the ones that are supporting Napoleon because they have no entree. They don't feel like they have the same entree even to the current administration. And so I think they're looking at this and saying, this may be our last chance, to have a voice in government.
And the religious community, always been a power in the city of Detroit. What role do you see the religious community playing?
In large measure, they're supporting Napoleon. You have to remember his father is a Baptist preacher. He had a huge rally Sunday at Mount Zion Baptist Church. Huge. Some of the biggest names in the black clergy were there. And you can't underestimate that. And I think that if Duggan survives the primary, you will see that amplified, that level of support. You'll see it on a level that you haven't seen in years.
Interesting.
Because the African American clergy are really the last group of free black people in Detroit, in the country, in terms of speaking their mind. Because they're not supported. Their income, their pay, their salary is not supported by anybody other than their constituency, which tends to be black, and so they'll say anything.
And how concerned are you if it turns out to be Napoleon versus Duggan, that race becomes the predominant issue in the campaign, and what danger lies as a result of that?
Well, I don't know if there's a danger in it, but I think that will, I suspect that's what will happen. But if say, a Lisa House or a Crystal Crittenden survives, it will be a totally different general election. It will be an election where you talk about substance. If it's just the black-white issue, then it's you're looking at symbols as opposed to substance.
Can we get past that, though? If it is Duggan, Napoleon, can we get past race? Can we get past the symbolism to focus on substance in this race?
Well, hopefully the candidates would bring that to the table, but it will depend on them. It really will.
And the type of campaigns they
Right,
run.
right.
Yeah. Do they feed into stereotypes as well as just feed into race issues that they know are volatile?
It's going to be fascinating.
Yes,
no
it
doubt.
is.
And the future of the city of Detroit and the direction after the EM and bankruptcy, these men and women who are elected are going to have
a lot on the
an
table.
important job.
I think that's an important point. And, some people would say, well, with the city, filing for bankruptcy, you have an emergency manager, why would anybody want to run for office? And some have said it's because they're looking forward to day one when the emergency manager leaves. That we're still going to have a city. There will still be a government, and somebody will have to make those decisions.
Yeah, and there's no question about that, and that's why we've been mentioning throughout the day when we were telling people hopefully they would get to the polls, is that long term, you've got to think long term about who needs to be in place when the emergency manager and that structure is no longer around. That you need the best leadership, you need the bright leadership, and you need people that are genuinely going to fight for Detroit in the way that you and others have done in the past.
Let me share with you something else that's interesting. There's one adage in politics that says that every election is different. I looked at some of the literature for some candidates who are running for city council, and one of the things that they talked about was a willingness to work with the emergency manager. I mean, they just said it outright, this is a whole new generation of politicians. Many of them are young people, and they're looking at the city in a long-term view, but they're not looking at it from the eyes of, say, somebody like myself, who was part of a legislative body in the city when the city council and the mayor were your counterbalancing forces in government. Now you have a whole new group of people running for office who are looking at this new paradigm, which is emergency manager, bankruptcy, and post-bankruptcy. So from my perspective, I'm actually very encouraged by it. I think it's fascinating that the life of a city moves on with or without people who once governed, that you get a whole new crew of people and they will have an opportunity to make their mark.
Any chance you'll run for office of any type again?
I doubt it. I doubt it. But I'm very grateful for the experiences that I've had with it, and have no regrets. And trying to make up for lost time now at my church.
Right.
Reverend Nick Hood, thank you
You're
so
doing
much.
that. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Great
All
to
right.
have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
Good seeing you, Reverend.
All right.
Okay. Good.
Primary election 2013.